Okay, good. All right, so do you remember yesterday we talked about all the characteristics of the countries, right?
Yeah.
We just took a little Kahoot quiz on the characteristics of the countries.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're still operating on our essential question over here. What were the causes, events, and effects of the Great War, World War I? One of the great things about World War I is there's kind of 4 specific causes, and then there's one event that started the whole thing. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about some of the causes of the Great War now. Okay? One was nationalism. Now there were 2 types of nationalism. Kind of keep this in mind when you, for our little project we're going to do later. 2 types of nationalism. There's the one nationalism that I call kind of like old school nationalism, where nations thought they were so cool they wanted to make other countries like them. Okay, so the old school nationalism of the old countries like France and Germany and Great Britain and Austria-Hungary and Italy and Russia, they wanted to impose their nationalism on other people. That coming kind of out of the French Revolution. The new nationalism was when countries wanted to become independent. So if you look over here, this area where my hand is called the Balkans. Traditionally, the Ottoman Empire had been in control of this, but the Ottoman Empire is becoming weak, one of our characteristics that we talked about. The people that lived here wanted to form their own nations, get independence, a different form of nationalism. Romanians wanted a Romania, Serbians wanted a Serbia, Bulgarians wanted a Bulgaria. This was the new nationalism, okay? So these things, this was one of the causes. Second, imperialism. We've talked a lot about imperialism for several weeks, and the competition amongst these European countries through imperialism in Africa and other places was a cause of World War I. Militarism was another cause. Militarism, these countries built big militaries. They had lots of men in their armies. They made lots of guns, they made lots of bullets, they made ships, they made lots of stuff for war. All right? And they were glorifying war. Okay? Now, if you remember, it had been 100 years before a huge continental war. The last continental war was Napoleon. So they'd forgotten how horribly bad it was. Yes, there have been some smaller wars along the way, but there hadn't been a really big, ugly, bad war in a long time. People forgot about it, and people, sometimes writers, glorified war. So that was some other stuff on militarism. I mentioned armies grew. Conscription, that's a military draft. So boys got drafted even before the war started. Russia had the largest army, but other countries had big armies too. Germany, France, Great Britain not so much. Austria-Hungary had a big army. Okay? And the bottom line is pretty important too. As armies grew, so did the importance of generals in making foreign policy decisions. Now normally, the leader of the country makes foreign policy decisions. Like our president makes foreign policy decisions. But in this time, generals were making foreign policy decisions. Not for politics, but for military reasons. So if generals are making decisions for your foreign policy, you've got a good chance of going to war, because generals want to do their job, right? Want to go to war. So this was part of it. There were a few underlying causes. Underlying all of these that we've talked about, these 3, one was industrialism. We've talked about that a lot. These countries had factories that made lots of stuff. And before industrialism, these countries had hundreds of guns. Now with industrialism, they had thousands of guns. They had thousands of guns and thousands of uniforms and thousands of boots and thousands of everything, and they all thought that they were really cool because of industrialism. They had lots of stuff. Okay? Now, next, internal dissent. Internal dissent. This is an underlying cause to all of the main 4. This is an underlying cause. Internal dissent was a desire by leaders in certain countries to stop socialism and communism and other things like that. Because think about it, if your country goes to war, everybody in your country has to be on the same team. You can't have people trying to kind of change the government when things are going on with a war. All right? That's part of internal dissent. We've talked for a long time this year about threats to governments, internal and external threats. External threats, another nation trying to attack your nation. Internal threats is people within your nation trying to change the government. Socialists and communists are internal dissent. Okay. Here's another quick one for you. Like in our country today, you know, we've got different political parties, right? We've got Democrats, Republicans, and different groups within them. We hear all the time on the news of Democrats say things about Republicans and, you know, how they should think that the government should go and a country should go. Everybody's got an opinion. But there are certain times in a country's history when, like, a country's attacked, like when our country, when y'all are too young to remember this, but in 9/11, when our country was attacked, for like a year after that, there were no, like, Democrats and Republicans. I mean, everybody was an American. And so people kind of quit arguing for a while, and then that subsided, and then we went back to politics as usual. But internal dissent, a lot of people think that internal dissent had to do with starting the war. A couple other things we want to talk about this internal dissent. Anarchists are another group. In 1901, our president, President McKinley, was assassinated by an anarchist. So you've got socialists, communists, anarchists. Anarchists believe that there should be no institutions at all. Okay? So, and then, you know, we've talked before about potential revolutionary people. Hungry peasants make great revolutionaries. Hungry urban workers make great revolutionaries. So there were a lot of poor, hungry people that were potentially revolutionary. And conservative leaders in Europe wanted to keep things the same. All right? So, to stop internal problems, some historians think that leaders went to war for this reason. Okay? This is the fourth, okay? This is the fourth of the main causes, entangling alliances, okay? Or the alliance system. Y'all remember yesterday I asked you a question, what would you be willing to do for a friend? Would you fight for a friend? If you were with your friend and your friend got attacked, would you help your friend? Most of us would say, yeah, if our friend is getting attacked, I would help him or her. All right, but if your friend picks a fight for no reason, are you going to help your friend if he picks a fight? Okay? All right, this is the whole thing with these alliances, defensive and aggressive agreements. Okay? And this was the fourth great cause, this alliance system. There were two alliances, the Triple Alliance. This was Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. The unique thing about this alliance was that, if you remember, Austria and Italy were enemies for many years because Austria wanted land in Italy, and so did Italy wanted their land, okay? And Germany wanted to be friends with Italy because Germany didn't like France, okay? So that was the Triple Alliance, right down the center of Europe. How did that start? That started when after the Franco-Prussian War and after German unification of 1870, Bismarck wanted to isolate France. That was German foreign policy, was to isolate France. So Germany, friends with Italy and Austria here. Germany also had a treaty with Russia and knew that Great Britain wouldn't really cause a problem because Great Britain had the largest navy and they had an empire and they weren't really too worried about France. That changed when Bismarck got fired. There was a new leader in Germany, and that changed the foreign affairs, and it changed the politics in Europe. So when that happened, Kaiser Wilhelm came in. He dropped a treaty with Russia, and he started building ships, and that angered Great Britain. Okay, so that was another shifting type of alliance thing. The other group was the Triple Entente. These were Britain, France, and Russia. Kind of a strange combination. Remember, historically, Great Britain and France had fought each other for hundreds of years at different times. Russia, real backward, way over here in the east. They still had an absolute monarch, which goes against democracy, which France and Britain were both democracies. So, a strange alliance here. Britain didn't even completely agree to go to war, but they said, well, it'll be a defensive type agreement. So you had these two, and all of that, all of these alliances, these two alliances, were tested during crises in the Balkans. Okay? Now, getting back to the Balkans, this area of Southeast Europe, when the Ottoman Empire was weakened and left, you had two old school big countries that wanted to move in and expand their empire. You had Austria, who wanted to come in here and be the empire for this area, and you had Russia wanting to be the empire coming and taking over, because there are a lot of people in this area that are Slavic. Russians are Slavic, a lot of Slavs here. And what else was Russia looking for when they wanted to come expand? A warm water port, okay? So Austria wanted to move in, and Russia wanted to move in, and guess what? The people who lived there, they wanted nationalism. They wanted their own country. So that's why we say the Balkans was like a powder keg, and for generations, this is right before World War I, Europe was called a powder keg. Now, we don't really see powder kegs laying around much anymore, but a powder keg is just a big barrel full of gunpowder. And most of y'all know that gunpowder can be ignited, and it makes a big boom. So the thought was that it was like a big barrel of gunpowder, and all it needed was a match or a spark, and all of Europe would go big kaboom. Okay? Now, that one spark, or that one event, came when there was an assassination of an archduke. Okay? And his name was Franz Ferdinand. And now an archduke is like a vice president. His uncle was actually the Emperor of Austria. He went down to Sarajevo, this city over here in Bosnia, he and his wife, and he got assassinated by a terrorist. The terrorist was from a terrorist group called the Black Hand. Our modern day equivalent, Al-Qaeda. Okay? So this assassin killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, and when that happened, the Austrians, they got mad at these terrorists. Since the terrorists were Serbian, they called up the Serbian government and said, hey, your terrorist group killed our vice president, or our archduke. And they said, the Serbian government said, we don't have anything to do, that's a terrorist group, we don't have anything to do with them. But everybody knew that they kind of did. So Austria said, well, we're going to bring our army into your country to look for the terrorists. Serbia said, no, you can't do that. You can't have your army come into our country just to look for terrorists. So Serbia called Russia. Remember the alliance system? Well, Russia was friends with Serbia too. Serbia called Russia, said, hey, Russia, can you help us if Austria attacks? Russia said, sure. We got all these men. We're ready for war. Let's do it. So Austria gets word. So they call their friends Germany and say, hey, Germany, if Russia declares war on us, will you help? The Germans said, sure, no problem. We're friends with you. If Russia attacks you, we'll attack Russia. Great. So then the generals in Germany said, wait a minute, if we end up going to war with Russia, you know we'll probably have to fight France anyway. If this whole thing breaks out, let's just attack France right now. Did France have anything to do with a guy getting assassinated over here? No. Okay? And then the Germans said, well, how are we going to get to France? Let's go through Belgium. Go through Belgium? They're a neutral country. You can't march an army through a neutral country. Well, it's the quickest way to get to Paris. We'll do it. Germans marched through Belgium. That made Great Britain mad. So Great Britain said, you know what? You violated Belgian neutrality. We're going to join this war too. And pretty soon, everybody in Europe was at war. Okay? Now, here's what you're going to do. I'm going to give you some instructions right now. So I need you to get out a piece of notebook paper. Okay, we're going to make a foldable graphic organizer about all the things that we just talked about. Okay, and I need to borrow a piece of paper from you, Brady. Yeah. All right, here we go. So get your paper out and get a pen out, and you're going to follow me with our graphic organizer. Okay, first of all, fold it to the red line. Okay? Semi-hot dog style to the red line. And then fold it in half again on itself. Okay? Now you have a point right here, away from the single hole, all the way at the bottom. Y'all follow me and you help each other. I want you to fold that about half a thumb length right there. Fold that. Now open it up. Now I want you to take your pen and start drawing. I'll show you where we want the diamond in the middle. Just like that. Everybody look, follow me. Diamond in the middle. Okay? Now I want you to fill in some of the lines. Like this. Fill in some of the lines like this. This is going to go in your notebook. So make sure you know that you'll put it in like this, and this is what you're going to use to study. All right, now draw one more line across the red line at the top. like that. Okay? And at the very top, I want you to write causes of, you can fill the rest of that in, causes of World War I, causes of the Great War. Okay, now, the 4 boxes on the outside are the causes. Okay? So I'll give you the first one. The first one's nationalism. And when you get ready to do your work with your book, you're going to give a definition of that, and there are 2 kinds. There's rivalry nationalism, and there's new nations. So look what I did right here. I got rivalry and new nations. There's 2 kinds. Your book will talk about rivalry nations and new nations as being nationalism. Okay? All right? The next, and I'm not going to do all of it for you. I'm just going to, the next is an I word. Follow me right here. The next is an I word. Big long I word right there. Okay? The one on your bottom left is an M word, and you're going to give definitions of these and talk about it. Okay? And this is going to be in your book in section 1. And the bottom, your bottom right, is going to be 2 words. One starts with an A and the other starts with an S. Okay? So A, leave a blank. S, leave a blank. Okay? All right, and under this, there are 2 of those. And just make a T, like this. Make a T, and there are 2 types of these. Okay? There's a T here, and there are 2 types of these. Okay? I know I'm moving kind of quick right here, and I'll catch up to you after we turn this video off. Right in the middle, I want you to write the word event. Because there are 4 causes and 1 event. Now, whenever you're describing an event, you remember this from English class, who, what, where, when, why, how. Who, what, where, when, why, how. You've been doing that forever since you were a little kid. First grade, I know because my wife teaches first grade. Okay? They teach kids to write about events. Who, what, where, when, why, how. And that's what you're going to put right here in the middle. Okay? All right. That's it. That's your assignment.